Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mkr Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting, number 142, taking place on Thursday, May 20th at 1700 UTC. My name is Long for Wisdom. I'm the governance facilitator at Mkr. I run these meetings. Yeah, as usual, we've got a bit of an agenda. Kind of had a reasonably busy week. Well, not busy week, but eventful week, I suppose is the correct way of saying it. This week, so we'll chat a little bit about that later as well. But yeah, we got our regular weekly updates from all of the core units. We're gonna have the Mips Updates. I think we're gonna have a segment from Primosh talking about the Liquidations 2.0 performance. He's gonna give us a bit of an analysis. He's got a presentation, so it should be pretty cool. And then I think we're also the kind of mandated actors, core unit facilitators wanted to kind of discuss PSMs again later in the sort of discussion and QA section. I know this has come up a couple of times in the community recently as well. So we'll get to that hopefully on the end. Cool. I think that covers, I guess the general preamble. Yeah, we like to sort of hear comments and questions. If you have either of those, please don't be shy. Feel free to interrupt or sort of ask questions. So, all right. With that, I think I'll do the governance updates. So this week, we had an executive last week on Friday, which I do not believe was passed yet. It hadn't when I checked earlier. So if you haven't voted on that, please consider doing so. It brings, well, if it passes, it brings a couple of stability fee changes. Also updates the Uniswap LP oracles to the new versions. No major changes, just sort of minor fixes based on audit results. So this week's polls, we had, I think, 3 polls regarding Uniswap liquidity pool tokens, or vaults based on liquidity pool tokens, and moving those to the Liquidations 2.0 framework. So the risk team proposed parameters for those liquidations, for the Liquidations 2.0 framework for those vaults. They were passed, so those will be in this Friday's executive. We also had our monthly MIPS governance poll for the month of May, which also passed. So that will be confirmed on Monday in an executive on Monday, which will hopefully be the last executive we have to do on Monday if it passes, as we change the governance cycle slightly. All right, to give a sort of quick update on what GovAlpha has been doing, we've sort of been working on building and setting up a sort of more focused documentation platform to serve governance. Still in the early stages, and sort of lifting a lot of documentation from that we sort of published elsewhere, and trying to sort of organize it in a way that makes kind of more sense to the audience, I guess. We've also been working on the MIPS portal and MIPS consistency, kind of coordinating feedback with DSpot to sort of improve the portal, and adding tags and to the MIPS to sort of support new views in the MIPS portal. I think if you look at the MIPS portal, you can now see there is a menu. It's kind of small at this point, but we're going to add more stuff to it and more views. So yeah, that should continue to improve slowly and steadily. Yeah, I've been coordinating with SourceCred a little around some future technical work to make the whole SourceCred distribution process more trustless and automatic. Kind of looking to set it up so that we don't have to manually do distributions, and that we can sort of make sure that there is that the cred distribution is kind of, I guess, the canonical one, in case someone tries to do something rogue. Not that we expect that, but then also figuring out how we can improve the forum a little bit. So Eli's been working pretty heavily on this. I made some kind of minor changes to the top level categories earlier today. You may or may not have noticed yet. But we're going to kind of continue trying to set up the categories in the way that makes the most sense for users who want to find things. And then the last thing I've been kind of working on is sort of trying to figure out how to onboard contributors into sort of Go Alpha more effectively, I guess, and more efficiently. Just trying to figure out like sort of good like sort of starter tasks we can give people to do. Figure out sort of what sort of things we want people to sort of build up into, and generally get a little bit more organized on that front. Cool. And that covers updates for Go Alpha. So that takes us to, I believe, Form at a Glance, which I think is Peyton, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, double dipping, I guess. Did it last week, but back again. Let me drop the link in the chat for you in case you want to follow along. Yeah, pretty quiet week, right? So my 3-point summaries are pretty much all about yesterday. I imagine we'll hear a bit more about it throughout the length of this call, but we did liquidate over 40 million DAI worth of collateral. So liquidations 2.0 showing some serious strength there. That resulted in over 1,100 Mkr being burned in the 24 hours before I made the Form at a Glance post. So pretty exciting burner. I always think of Nick's Twitter, whatchamacallit, background there whenever we're burning a bunch of MKR. Good feeling. Only, well, I don't know, wouldn't say only, but there are one drawback perhaps is that we are 500 million lower in terms of total DAI in circulation as a result of all these liquidations and deleveraging, but been growing pretty steadily since. Are a few cool announcements I wanted to draw your attention to. First of which being the speaker series, the kind of first iteration of that Paper Imperium has brought to us with the St. Louis Fed Senior VP. Guy's name is David, and he will be with us on June 29th at 1500 UTC. So mark that on your calendars. Should be a pretty exciting event. Other thing that came out this week was the Mkr Wrist dashboard has been adding lots of features. I know that came in handy yesterday for tracking a lot of the vault liquidations and how well or how scary the next hour was going to be, perhaps. So I'm sure Pramosh will give us some more updates on that as we go on. In terms of active discussions, we got a few ones I wanted to highlight here. First being a pre-MIP discussion brought to us by none other than Mr. Bourbon. This is a market sentiment-based strategy to burning MKR. It involves the idea for burning MKR dynamically based on short interest across the market. Following up on last week's governance and risk call, Jerry posted an informal poll about do we want a MakerDAO mascot, and if so, what should that mascot be? Lots of fun options there if you haven't given your opinion. And also wanted to note a post from Mio talking about the possibility for having subsidies to MakerDAO political parties. This idea being that between working groups and other things, there's a lot of discussion and advocacy that gets done that certainly isn't paid for, and maybe we should be considering going that route to further debate and discussion. We did have 2 active signal requests right now. One came just after I initially posted it. Thanks for Shupi pointing that out so I could add it in. First one came to us from Aaron, who's polling or signaling rather the reduction of the tout parameter for the USDC PSM. This would essentially polling dropping it to 0 to make swapping feeless and with no slippage when going from DAI to USDC. And then Shupi did post a poll there for a new type of Wi-Fi vault with a higher liquidation ratio and lower stability fee, much like ETH. And that came from a conversation with Growth and the folks over at Yearn. So pretty exciting there. Other than that, it's just our usual ongoing initiatives and help wanted sections. Hopefully we'll be having more places to add to that as we grow bigger. And if there's anything you ever want highlighted, let me know. Shoot me a message. Happy to add it into the post for you. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Peyton. Very thorough look at what's going on right now, I think. Does anyone have any questions for either me or Ben, I guess, on governance things? All right, let's move on. Protocol engineering. Chris mentioned he was getting Starlinked, but maybe he's back now.
Yeah, I think I'm back. We'll see what happens. Okay. Yeah, hey everybody, Chris from Protocol Engineering. So just wanted to give a couple updates on what we've been working on. So we've got a number of things in review this week. So we did the sort of review of the delegated voting contract, and we also reviewed the Flashmint module. So some sort of discussions and like kind of security review type stuff around that. We had a sort of L2 strategy meeting. So like exactly how we see ourselves being able to expand to layer 2 networks and whatnot. And we also had a session with the KEG paid, and we think that moving to a design that's closer to DSS Vest, in fact, actually is basically just DSS Vest with a few lines of code changed, is probably going to be more sufficient right now. So we're gonna table the KEG just for a little bit, because I think the KEG has other useful functionality that we could implement when we need it, but it's a little more complicated than I think we need for sending funds to teams. So yeah, last week's executive is still out there and needs votes. So please, if you are considering voting, vote on it. That is a critical prerequisite for doing the LP tokens to Liquidations 2.0, which I think after the last couple days, everyone can agree is highly desirable. So yeah, Liquidations 2.0 requires that it checks the OSM, and the OSM update is the last week's executive. So we need to push that executive through. And next week will be, so we'll do the LP tokens this week, and then next week we're gonna finish up with stablecoins, although there's nothing really much to do with stablecoins. It's more like cleaning up the technical debt and getting rid of Liquidations 1.2. And so we're gonna move that over, and maybe later in the call, we can have a discussion about like stablecoins and the PSM, what governance wants to do with the PSM for the rest of the stablecoins, and then how we would liquidate those stablecoins into respective PSMs. And if we're not going to move something to a PSM, exactly like how we end up like dealing with it, liquidating it, whatever we need to do. So, yep. And then obviously, I think it's safe to say Liquidations 2.0 was a wild success. I'm still cautiously optimistic, but I kind of maybe should pause here and say it was a huge effort across so many teams. And there's just like, there's not one person that's sort of responsible for it. There's a lot of coordination. There was a lot of, like almost every engineer touched it, including engineers that are no longer with Mkr. And yeah, so, and also, we built it in the Keeper ecosystem, came and used it, and man, did it work well. So about that. And so, yeah, so we've got one piece of ongoing work. We're also working on converting the Clipper callee for Liquidations 2.0 over to the LP tokens. And so Keeper, or let's say the auction demo Keeper, as some people know it, will be capable of liquidating LP tokens as well when it's ready. I think there's also maybe some Mega Poker work, although I don't know where we left that. But it for protocol engineering, unless someone else on the protocol engineering team has something that I forgot to mention, feel free to talk about it.
Looks like you may be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just like.
And any questions in general, really. Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
Could you, well, besides loading everybody with spotlight and all kinds of accolades from Liquidations 2.0 because it was just brilliant. So well done, just absolutely well done. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the sort of thinking and time frame behind delegation?
Yeah, so we're beelining it to the sort of lightest touch or simplest implementation that we can. The irony is, I think most of the code I wrote back in Osaka, so it's just been sitting around since DevCon, and then Sam sort of updated it for modern times, and then I think we've got one sort of general concern with that implementation, which is that it doesn't expire delegate, and so there's a bit of a like concern if we end up putting, or you delegate your MKR to somebody and then you get hit by a bus, that that person basically is going to stay in control or remain in control of that MKR off to infinity. Yeah, and so so we think we're going to add in like at least a rough expiration that maybe is like a year or 18 months or something, because we do expect to have DSS Vest replacing the chief at some point. But that would make it so at least like people or somebody that we're delegating to doesn't maintain that power or that voting power for a year or 2 years or for infinity. So so anyway, sorry, that was a long answer to say probably if I had to guess, we've got some stuff in early June to mid-June, but I would bet that delegation could be ready by like mid to late June. I sometimes overpromise, and I don't want to do that. So if anyone else on the protocol engineering team sees me doing that, like call me out. Yeah.
The other dependency is the front end work. So we were talking with the JS team yesterday, walking them through what the requirements are for this, and there is a bit of work there. They also have a bit of dependency on completing Liquidations 2 work. They're also working on that portal. So I think mid to end June is a safe assumption, but I can't commit to that because the team has to size it and they have to commit to that. But I think in our discussion yesterday, that was giving a good indicator of where this was going to land. The code itself, Chris, is like you said, I think mostly it's all done. There's the expiry, which will be, I think, before and post to governance to pick a date or accept the 1 year in the future. Other than that, I think most of it's there. We'd also like to do an internal audit, like all things, but then it's over to the UI, making sure that we can test this on Kovan and go from there. So yeah.
Super.
The good news with this approach is that it's basically like a modified version of the vote proxy, which means custodians can probably also integrate with it pretty easily. So like Coinbase custody could probably very quickly like make a change that would work with this, and then people on Coinbase custody could delegate, which would be pretty great.
Perfect. Thank you, folks. Much appreciated.
I have a quick question about the functionality of the delegates. Are the delegates able and supposed to use a vote proxy themselves?
Yeah, so basically the I guess maybe maybe I should be clear about the terminology, right? So are we talking about the delegator or the delegate? This is actually killing us, the terminology for this. So the
delegate, so the person who has others votes. Backing. Yeah, so the person who is voting, right?
Yeah, so the person who's voting will use the vote proxy interface in order to cast their votes. So
no, I think we lost him.
To them in that contract. So how did I get Starling? Great.
Well, let me ask.
Kurt, thank you. You do it.
Yeah. Well, let me clarify a little bit about. Well, I mean, first of all, what's the exact motivating question here? Because I mean, there is a separation between like the UI and what are the underlying contracts actually doing. You know, as things stand, well, let me just describe how it works. Is that, you know, there's a delegation contract. You know, people can delegate to it. The delegate is basically an owner or an authority on that contract. And then they interact directly with that contract to vote. So there's not like a vote proxy per se. It's like the delegation contract itself is the vote proxy in some sense. Now they could separately, you know, have their own MKR or something in a vote proxy or something if they wanted to, but you know, probably the cleaner thing is that they just delegate to themselves since they're a delegate anyway. I'm not sure if there's so is there some concern with that model, or is that reasonable?
I think it's reasonable. The practical concern is a question whether we need to continue supporting the vote proxy, or at one point we can completely replace it with the delegation system. The one reason I see, and it's probably not a good enough reason to keep the vote proxy, is to secure the actual voting itself, right? So if you control a really large amount of MKR that you were voting with, but even then, like I don't see how it would make sense. So I guess from your answer, the vote proxy can be deprecated after some time.
Yeah. So
once the delegation system is in place.
So let me just check and see if I understand the utility of the vote proxy is that you have this separation between there's an address that can move the MKR, and then there's another address that can only vote. And that's the value of the vote proxy, right? The separation of those two things.
Yeah, exactly. And the same separation is there, right, with the delegate contract.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, is that you have a very analogous thing of, you know, you can make your hot wallet or whatever the thing that's the owner of the delegation contract or whatever, so it can only vote. And then you delegate to yourself or to the delegation contract from a cold wallet. And so that then the address that is responsible for voting on proposals has no power to actually move the MKR.
Yep. All right, we should maybe kind of moving on, because it's taking a little bit of time and it's getting a little bit maybe more complicated than it needs to in this call. Yeah, we can have follow-ups discussions to figure out any details that we need to, I think. So with that, let's maybe move on to oracles. Nick, have you got an update for us?
Sure. So the executive, right, to put in the replacement Oracle LP contracts, right, still hasn't executed, right? So we're still using the older Oracle LP token contracts. So hopefully we can get those in pretty soon, because there are quite a few kind of fixes in there, right, that the audit caught, and they are more gas efficient as well, like considerably so. Like Kurt and some of the smart contracts guys did a really good job at optimizing that. So would encourage us to get that through soon. Looking at the events of yesterday, in terms of like how the oracles performed, I'd say we did considerably better than we did during an event like Black Thursday. So the lessons learned from a year ago, I think have this was the first time that we really put them under a stress test. And I think that while we did kind of have like Oracle alarms going off left and right, it's just kind of expected when you have that crazy amount of volatility going on where you're basically submitting a new Oracle price every couple minutes, right? Because if you have a price sensitivity of say 1% on ETH, and ETH is dropping by 1%, every few minutes, right? You're just constantly triggering update after update after update. So that being said, I think one of the areas that we do need to be a little bit more conscious about is probably cost. And I think there's been a lot of discussion in general in the, funnily enough, in the speculation channel recently, right, about being more conscious of the costs that the DAO is taking on. And the Oracle costs are a significant portion of those costs, and the part that makes them difficult to reason about is the fact that on a day like yesterday, right, where I think the maximum gas price I saw was like 3,500 Gwei, right? That means that compared to a normal day where, and I can't believe I'm saying normal is 100 Gwei now, but compared to a normal day, right, that means you're spending 35 times the amount of Oracle costs, in a single day, which is, right, you can reason about basically you spend a month's worth of Oracle expenses in a single day, right? And so when you're thinking about, right, that these costs are currently being handled by the foundation, but are expected to be taken over by the protocol. On the one hand, right, it's how do you determine from like an Oracle core unit perspective how much is enough, right, to ask from the DAO, right? What cadence, right, do you want to ask for this money from the DAO, right? So you could say, for example, that like, oh well, we're going to ask like every month, right? But then what happens if one of those executives, right, doesn't get passed in time, and right, then you're kind of just sitting there like, oh shoot, right? Similarly, if you start asking for like a budget every 3 months, right, and you see a big spike in gas prices, right, this estimation that you made for how much you'd spend in 3 months, may be way under. So I think this is one of those things where you probably need to have some like, and I think we've discussed this for the core units in general, right? That we have this like emergency multi-sig that they can like dip into. So I know that was part of the protocol engineering core unit proposal, and it was part of the Oracle core unit proposal, right? Where there is a kind of reserve multi-sig, right? That in times of like, protocol distress, that we can dip into. We'd probably need a fund like that for Oracle kind of gas costs for in case we encounter crazy days like yesterday, right, where we spend a month worth of Oracle gas, in a single day. So yeah, so that's going to be what I'm going to be working on over the next couple of weeks, is just coming up with a way to conservatively model how much we need to spend. And I think part of that will include also just determining for a collateral type, right? What are the expected costs, or at least if you can't say a fixed number, what is the like expected range of costs that it costs you every year in gas just to have a collateral type in the Mkr protocol? And I think that will give us a lot of perspective of when we want to onboard something like, how much revenue and stability fees do we think this new collateral type is going to bring? And if it's less than what the expected Oracle costs are, right, then it's probably a no-go, right? And that includes, right, for some of the existing collateral types we have, right? So if any of you have been following the discussion in the speculation channel or governance and risk, right, this was brought up as well, where we have a bunch of tokens where we probably spend more on Oracle costs annually than they make in stability fees, right? I think the discussion yesterday was around ZRX, right? And ZRX is definitely one of those vaults. And, just because it ended up being profitable for the protocol, because yesterday we made a bunch of liquidation penalties. I don't think we should really account for revenue from liquidation penalties when considering whether something that we onboard is profitable or not profitable. So just to kind of add to that list, just throwing out some stuff, right? KNC, definitely unprofitable. Balancer, definitely unprofitable. Comp, definitely unprofitable. Some of the LP tokens we added, I think DAI USDT hasn't had like a single DAI minted against it, right? Definitely unprofitable. I think Aave ETH, Link ETH, those are all unprofitable as well. So I think it's one of these things where we want to, onboard new collateral types liberally, because it's the demand for a vault, right, has kind of been all over the place. It's been hard to predict, right? We have some tokens like, Wi-Fi that are runaway successes, and then we have, much higher market cap tokens, right, like Compound, that have just been complete, duds. So onboard liberally, right, test out the demand, but then also offboard liberally, right? As soon as you realize that the demand is not there, right, then there's no point in continuing to take on the Oracle costs, right? And Oracle costs are just, one cost associated with it, right? There's probably other costs, associated with maintaining a collateral. But I would argue that the Oracle costs are probably the majority of the continuous costs related with supporting a collateral type. Okay, yeah, and that's my cue. Thanks Long for keeping me in check. That's my update, but I just want to get some discussion going in the forum about that, and I'll be posting a proposal in the next few weeks about Oracle Gas and how we want to structure that from a DAO perspective.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, I think these are pretty critical issues. I think everyone can recognize that we need to consider as we go forward. All right, so with that, let's maybe move on to risk. So Primož, do you have an update for us?
Yeah. So last week we proposed liquidation 2.0 parameters for uni LPs, and the only remaining ones now are stablecoin vaults, which also need to have these new liquidation parameters implemented. There's actually a few ways how to liquidate stablecoins. I guess we'll discuss this later in the call, but in general, we have some generic auction price curves and other parameters ready, and they can all be used for all stablecoins. And even if you liquidate them into PSM, which was one of the ideas, and we might talk about today, some of them are still over collateralized, so they will stay in old vaults, and we need to have this liquidations 2.0 support in any case. Sushi LP evaluations were also done today by Marco. They should be posted shortly. In general, proposing similar parameters as for uni LPs, apart from stability fee, which is proposed to be higher because the yields are on Sushi LP leverage farming are just higher. And then we also released, just mentioned this new risk dashboard from our site. You can read more about the roadmap on the forum. I also saw many people use this dashboard, especially yesterday when we had a lot of liquidations. So I imagine this site that shows liquidations in for the next OSM update was very popular. I may just need to notice that the site is still in beta, so there might be some errors, or not really errors, but some data might be outdated for 10 to 20, 30 minutes. So don't get scared too soon when looking at those numbers. And yeah, we had liquidations yesterday. I published a presentation on forums. You can see how well everything went. Yeah, our metrics are pretty much, all of them pretty much great. But we'll cover this later on when I'll present this. And besides that, we also noticed we might need to reconfigure some of the parameters. Yesterday, we even noticed that unwinding 5,000 DAI depth vault because of high gas costs was just maybe even unprofitable, but which means we might need to sadly reevaluate our DAS limits once again, also related to keepers kicking them and so on, and bidding for them. And lastly, we also discussed to introduce a flat fee for kicking auctions. So this is the tip parameter, is different than the other one, which is called the chip parameter, which is a variable incentive. And that's because the variable fee doesn't offset the gas costs for kicking smaller vaults. And we knew actually about this, but there were always some edge case attack vectors, because if the tip is too high, so this flat fee, keepers could be farming these kick incentives or reset incentives. So we'll reevaluate this again, probably propose a flat fee somewhere in the range around $300 to be seen, but in general, it should be lower than the penalty fee on the dust size. And this is $650. Otherwise, there's this attack vector again. And yeah, I think that's it from my side.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, for myself, I found the dashboard like indispensable the other day, so I was like very impressed with it so far. Right, let's move into real world finance then. Seb, you got some updates?
Yes. So first, on good news, we have now more than 1 million DAI coming from real world assets. We have now 1.3 million DAI coming from New Silver. And those are not going anywhere, even if there is some volatility in the crypto markets, because they are locked for 12 months anyway. On the centrifuge batch, so we are trying to publish an executive on June 11th with all the centrifuge collaterals that you will want to onboard. The pool will go live either next week or the week after. All the risk assessment are already out except for People's Company, and it should be done by tomorrow. On the trust model, we are finishing a first review of the success legal documents that Matthew shared in the forum last week. We are working as well to see how we can incorporate a Mkr representative or fund company in the Cayman Island. So it's quite similar to the Matthew ID. Because what we see in the trust or the collateral agents is that they are willing to do almost anything for money, for cash, but they don't want to make any decision, never. So that's why we need to have someone to tell them what they should do and what script they should follow, or at least trigger the launching of the scripts that they need to follow. They will follow only one script, but you need someone to kick them. And there was also the first real world asset committee this week. So quite excited about that. So that means that a lot of community members are putting together ideas and concerns and feelings about real world asset to move this space forward as representative, more or less representative of the community. They are not really representative, but they choose to dedicate more time to study real world assets and make better understanding and guide the governance on those topics. So that's quite exciting as well. So that's all I have for now. So if you have some questions, and I think that someone wants to make an announcement as well just after the question, if there are any.
Okay, I suppose I'm next. So here's the link for the updates for this week. Thanks to Seb's suggestion, we are going to start following DAI on other networks to see what's happening outside the Ethereum network. And it's interesting what's happening on Polygon. Like, we are seeing a lot of demand and new projects using DAI in Polygon, which is very, very interesting. We are also having these initial conversations with new DeFi projects, but in Polygon, that are going to launch there, and also different like payment gateways that are using DAI and are super interested on starting using DAI, but in Polygon. Payment gateways and wallets, which is super interesting. We also started conversations with Jern, because we wanted to develop this use case I told you 2 weeks ago about having custom-made vaults, or these industrial vaults for our biggest vault users. Because like as Paper has been telling us in the forum, I think it's super important to like understand how these users are using the protocol, and try to like help them to using it even more. So you can read the post that Shupi wrote, super interesting, about why the Yearns team is looking to open even bigger vaults. And I'm talking about maybe opening a vault with ETH for about 500 million DAI, and opening a vault with Wi-Fi for about 300 million DAI. So that's impressive. And well, Shupi talk with them, and please read the post and write your comments, because we want to do this kind of things with other vault users like Nexo or Celsius, which are the biggest users of our protocol. And one last thing is something I want to ask you, the community, to help us. During the last week, which is like incredible, we have a lot of exchanges from different parts of the world, which listed the Mkr token. And we don't know how to communicate it to the community, to the outside world, so everyone knows that they can buy DAI with their local currency. Sorry, Mkr with their local currency. Like, we know how to do it when it's DAI, but with Mkr we want to be like super careful, because Mkr is like our governance token. We don't want to just pump it and that's it. We want to be careful. So we want to like hear your ideas, because what I find super interesting is that it's happening. I'm going to share some links all over the world. Like, there are markets of Mkr, not just in Europe, but we are seeing also markets of Mkr in India, in Latin America, well, in Europe as well. So yes, please write your comments in the forum, because we really like all the ideas that are coming from the community, and we want your help to figure out what to do, how to announce, and how to manage these MKR listings in all these exchanges. And that's all for me for this week.
Great, thank you, Nadia. Yeah, is there like a specific forum post or anything where people can discuss or leave comments on that?
Well, I just put it like ask the question in our update, so you can like put your comment in the update for the week. But do you think I should create like a longer post explaining like the advantages or disadvantages of doing something related to the MKR token?
So I think for me personally that would help, right? Because I don't have a good understanding of, I guess, what the advantages and disadvantages are, and I think probably there's other people in the same situation, right? So
okay, gotcha. Okay, then I'll do it by today or tomorrow.
Awesome. All right, let's maybe move on. We're running a little short on time, so we've got a couple of cool things to get to at the end. So I'll try and move along swiftly. Cool. So sustainable ecosystem scaling. One, do you guys want to give? Oh, Water, I guess Water's here as well. Do you guys want to give an update or anything?
I posted an operational support weekly update. And Wouter, you can add anything if you want. But yeah, just to give the very brief update, we had well, Pros was presenting his candidacy yesterday in a call. You can already watch this on YouTube. It was very non-controversial and boring, so not much to see there since everyone likes Pros. For better or worse. Then yeah, two announcements. Next Wednesday we'll have more Monkey Irish presenting the collateral onboarding core unit, and the Wednesday after, so that's June the 2nd, we'll have Nick coming to present oracles. So really looking forward to those two. And then yeah, I think that's the quick overview. We're working on other workshops on Know Your Mips, but nothing in the agenda yet.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I feel like you covered operational support there as well. So I'll, I guess, move on to Mips.
That is me today.
You today. Awesome.
Yeah, I like Peyton. I'm double dipping.
Let me make you first. There you go.
Should be set. Okay, cool. All right, yeah, welcome everybody to the weekly MIPS update. My name is David. I'm a MIP editor and contributor here at Mkr. And so yeah, let's take a look. So we are in the month of May. Today is May 20th, as you know. So we actually just concluded the bundled MIPS governance poll, which I believe passed. So we should be looking forward to the bundled MIPS executive vote this coming week. And just to review May's formal submissions and also the inclusion poll results, since not all formal submissions actually made it through to the bundle this month. But yeah, we originally had these 4, but as a result of the inclusion polls, staking rewards actually did not make it into the bundle. And then likewise for the formal submissions for core units, we had strategic marcoms and sustainable ecosystem scaling. And only sustainable ecosystem scaling passed the inclusion poll stage and moved on to the bundled poll and executive vote. And so the May bundle is looking like this: 1 core unit, a couple of MIPS, and 1 amendment proposal. And so there's going to be a direct deposit module, which is an interface. It's a technical MIP for an interface for MakerDAO to interact with third-party lending protocols. And also we are having MIP 51, an update to the governance cycle. Besides just a cleanup of MIP 0 and the sustainable ecosystem scaling core unit, which is a core unit that researches, that does various types of research, but really is doing research, gap research into how MakerDAO needs to scale and the things that we're missing, etc. They incubate teams and potential core units, and also they advise core units in MakerDAO on best practices, on on a ton of stuff. So definitely check out the core unit pod sessions, and yeah, cool. So yeah, 2 MIPS, 1 core unit, 1 amendment this month. So right now we're in week 3. Next week, week 4 on Monday, we're going to see the bundled MIP executive vote. It's going to go live. It's the only executive vote that actually has a time limit. So that's going to run for 4 days, almost like a typical governance poll. So so please get your vote in. It's really important if you're an MKR voter that you are especially aware of the monthly bundled executive vote. And then Thursday, May 27th, we're going to have a governance cycle review by most likely Long for Wisdom. And yeah, and that's what's going to happen next week. As for next month, it's going to be pretty interesting because we have MIP 51, which is updating the governance cycle, inside of the bundled executive vote that's happening next week. So if that passes, June, which would have looked like this using our current governance cycle, will actually end up looking more like this. So instead of having the inclusion poll, the bundled governance poll, and the bundled executive vote, there's just going to be a formal submission period and then individual ratification polls for both MIP sets and individual MIPs and subproposals. So if there's a few MIPs that are posted together and they're related, they can obviously happen through one poll, but of course it's going to be up to the governance facilitators' best judgment. But either way, we are trimming the fat, making the process easier for MKR voters, and it seems like they like the idea based on the results so far. And so yeah, again, I'm just going to go between these two slides a few more times so people can kind of just get a visual understanding of what to expect next month. So yeah, this is going to be really cool also because MKR voters can now like comfortably vote for these things on the weekend over a longer time period. So I really like personally, I really like these changes. And so I'm looking forward to June if we see this MIPS bundle pass. And just a quick overview of ratification polls. So their duration is for 2 weeks. Their minimum positive participation requirement is 10,000 MKR, which means that yes must exceed no when the poll closes, and the yes vote weight must exceed the minimum positive participation value when the poll closes. So there has to be at least 10K on yes, no matter what. And it's a binary poll, so yes, no, abstain, which is like trinary, but we won't call it that. All right, new MIPS and RFC. We've seen a handful of things posted this month. So we actually saw a couple of budget updates from core units. We saw CES update their budget for the future. So their new subproposal 16.1 is up on the forum, I believe, and also in the MIPS repo. And as well, governance, Gov Alpha also posted an updated budget, SP11. So please check those out. Yeah. We also saw a technical MIP be proposed for DSS Vest, or sorry, I guess not proposed yet because it's in RFC. But yeah, it's a technical MIP for an MKR vesting module. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's also MIP 52, which is dispute resolution. Greg did a great job posting that. It defines a new dispute resolution process. And this is really important for our organization, for MakerDAO, because we are like a multi-headed organization with like no like clear-cut HR department, and yeah, and thankfully we haven't encountered a lot, really any like insane disputes that have like fractured our community in any way or anything like that. But having this MIP and this process defined is definitely a step in the right direction for us as an org. MIP 53, the Mkr Compensation Guidelines. So MIP 53 was posted by PlanetX in partnership with the Compensation Working Group. It details CU rewards and recommended practices. And just to also fill in some info here, there is an alternative set of compensation guidelines that have been posted to the forum by the Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling Core Unit. And I believe they might have a MIP to follow, but not 100% sure. I'll let them speak to that. But regardless, it's going to be interesting, and definitely be mindful of the fact that there are 2 different sets of MKR compensation guidelines. And again, MIP 53 is from the working group, and the others are from SES. And then we also saw 2 new core units enter into RFC. We saw Monkey Irish post collateral onboarding. It's a core unit that solely focuses on the collateral onboarding aspects of the Maker protocol. And yeah, it takes Monkey Irish facilitator. Its proposed annual budget is approximately $2.5 million a year, with a team size, a starting team size of 6 permanent full-time positions, with an additional 2 temporary roles. And as for the strategic happiness core unit, which is a little bit less heavy, it's a core unit that's focused on community engagement by memes, swag, and good vibes. It was proposed by our very own unofficial MakerDAO mascot, Saint Bourbon, for its facilitator. And its proposed annual budget is a whopping $0, with a 1 MKR annual grant requested, and its team size is 1 permanent. So yeah. That's about it for the MIPS update this week. Check out the mips.makerdao.com site for the MIPS portal. We keep that repo up to date. And yeah, so everything canonically can be found there. So thank you very much, and feel free to ask questions and stuff. I haven't been looking at the chat this whole time.
I'm not sure I saw any questions, but yeah, I'll echo Mio and say, yeah, I thought that was a great presentation, David. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I like the new style. Though I did feel like the X over the
yeah,
not parsing things was a little harsh.
No, that's the best part. The X was awesome.
Good. I'm glad. I'm trying to do things a little bit more visually, because I know sometimes just listening to like 15 different updates in a row can get a little bit daunting.
Yep. Cool. All right. So I think it's my job to do the MIPS governance poll review, kind of officially. So just confirm what David said, that yes, the MIPS governance poll passed. And the contents will continue to the executive votes on Monday. And as David said, hopefully that'll be the last time that we need to do an executive vote on Monday, in addition to ones on Fridays, or at least outside of the problems. Cool. All right, so let's move on. So we've got a couple. So we've got a couple of things left to go through. So we're going to have Primož do a presentation on the Liquidations 2.0 performance. And then we're going to try and sort of get some discussion going about the PSMs. But let's start with liquidations. So Primož, are you in a good place?
Yeah. Can you give me permission?
Yep. There you go.
You can see this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So yesterday we had the biggest liquidation event at Mkr, as many other places in DeFi. Ether and other currencies. So Ether actually dropped. I think it was the second biggest drop as we checked. I think the largest drawdown intraday was 46%, and the Black Thursday one last year was 48%. So it was pretty good stress test for Liquidations 2.0. So I'm going to show some stats. So this is the cumulative debt being liquidated, including penalty fees, on one day, which is 19th of May. I think it covers 24 hours. I think it's missing the two other ETH liquidations we had overnight. So I think roughly 50 million of debt was liquidated if we include those in one day, including penalty fees. And you can see that initially most of the red Bitcoin, maybe I should use this pointer. Red Bitcoin got liquidated initially. This is the green color, then ETH, the yellow. And then we had some other vaults such as UniA, and I think this is 0x, and this is ETB. So altogether 50 million in one day. And here are some performance stats, more or less focused on penalty fees. Okay, I forgot to mention there was altogether 177 auctions, and penalty fee was 5.1 million that was collected. Pretty much all the penalty fee was collected successfully, apart from few vaults where it wasn't, and these were actually 2 or 3 vaults on ETH, which were kind of unlucky when they got liquidated right at the worst point of time, especially considering the price curve. I'm going to talk about this a bit later. And ETB, because ETB has lower collateralization ratio, so any discount from auctions, from keepers' profits, or just slippage related or anything, leads to penalty fee not being fully collected, but it's kind of full. And then there's 0x, which also was a special case because it was liquidating in few batches, because we limited auction throughput, because the on-chain liquidity is not that good. So, but all in all, this is the full number. Nothing to complain really. Same chart, basically same status here, just with, we have some charts. Not gonna waste time here. And then we also had 2 loss events. So I wanted to include this to be fully transparent. But why they actually happened. So this is really small vault that got liquidated. And when keepers liquidate a small vault, it costs a lot in gas fees related to the debt being bought. So they bid at lower prices. And you can see that the slippage towards OSM was here even 28%. But yeah, the loss was 81 DAI at this vault. And then there's EDB. This one is not as small, but still, because it's EDB, and again, any slippage related to keepers profits or just bad price trajectory versus the price curve leads to a loss. So we had a bit of loss here, 12,000. So the total loss for Mkr was about 12,000 versus, as I showed, 5.1 million of revenues. So net is still positive. Then there's one another metric which is also relevant, and this is, there's actually three parts of the whole thing: how much penalty fees Mkr collects, what's the profit of keepers, and how much vaults get back. So this is also especially important, and this metric might be kind of confusing, and basically checks how much collateral vault owner got back versus his total deposited collateral. So if collateralization ratio is high, I mean liquidation ratio, you normally get more back. And for something like 175 liquidation ratio vaults, the amount that they should get back on some normal prices is about 30 to 35% of the remaining collateral, and this is what we're mostly seeing. Whereas at some lower collateralized vaults, such as ETA or even ETB, those shares are smaller, right? Because liquidation ratio is smaller, and the penalty fee is actually higher related to the whole collateral. And for ETB, normal number is around 15%. For ETA, should be closer to 20, and this could be a bit better. Why it wasn't is mostly because of those two vaults that I'm going to show later that were really unlucky, as I said, liquidated at worst possible time. And then we have this chart. Yeah, I couldn't include the labels here so you could see what's what. So this is ETA, the ETA auctions in total, measured as depth side. This is for Bitcoin, for instance. And what this chart tries to show is how do you measure auction efficiency, right? Normally it's related to OSM price, right? We know OSM price is lagged by 1 hour, and if keepers bid late, if they want more profit, if price trajectory is worse than the auction price curve, you have this delays in bids. So expected bid is about 40 minutes. But if price keeps tanking faster than the auction price, or if keepers want to make more profits, we have delays in bids. And when we have delays in bids, the price is lower than the OSM. And you can see, for instance, for ETA, the average discount on all the ETA auctions was about 6 to 7%. So if we wanted to have auctions like 100% efficient, everything would be somewhere here, maybe even higher, depends how the price trajectory goes. But normally you wanted to have like 100% efficiency, zero slippage on OSM. But why does this happen? One reason is just the auction price curve versus market price trajectory. It's not perfect, right? You can't just determine it because you don't know how the prices will move. The other one is related to keepers. So here's efficiency that basically looks at settlement prices at auction versus the market prices. So we wanted to check, what was the market price at the time of the settlement, whereas we looked at the off-chain real-time prices. This is not necessarily 100% correct because many keepers just flip collateral on on-chain venues, and it's not necessarily one-to-one synced with option prices. So this is just an estimate, but it's about there. And what does it show, right? It shows that keepers who were bidding, for instance, on ETA, they were actually bidding 6 to 7% below market prices, right? This was on average. This was some kind of estimated profit. Again, it's not 100% correct, but of course they need to take something for themselves. And what does this basically tell us? That this slippage that you see versus OSM is not necessarily related just to bad pricing, bad price trajectory versus auction curve, but also keepers, keepers are not 100% competitive. They're not working with zero profits. And that's why we're seeing, part of the worst performance also because of this. But still, good numbers in general. What's maybe worth to add here is that some smaller vaults, of course, have higher slippage, again, because gas costs are high, because keepers will bid lower, but also because this other vaults, the liquidity tokens is not as good, right? So when keepers offload, they need to assign the slippage, which they can already see on Uniswap, for instance, so they bid lower, right? And that's why we have throughput limitations, as we did yesterday for 0x. And then pretty much similar thing, but it's here it's focused only on ETH vaults, so on ETA, ETB, ETC. And here the 2 vaults that were really liquidated at the worst possible time. Yesterday we kind of had luck and we kind of hadn't. So the price updated right before the drop, which means that the auction price started at the at the higher price, which was around 2,440, and then the price kept tanking more than, I think, about 20% in 20 minutes or 30. And of course, the auction price curve couldn't catch the market price, which was dropping, and that's why these 2 vaults were liquidated much lower. At much lower prices, so about 25% discount to OSM. These were the vaults that I think didn't carry the penalty fee, and this is why we had a bit worse performance on ETA. Otherwise, all the other vaults pretty healthy. Everything up to 10% discount, I think it's good. But again, it's also a random process. So this is the distribution of settlement times. So we said that the expected auction duration is about 40 minutes if keepers don't take nothing for themselves, if prices are stable and so on. And we can see that on average on all the vaults types, we were between 30 and 50, which is 40. So on average, it worked as it should. But then again, because of this, random volatility, some vaults got liquidated a bit later. And here you can see again those 2 ETH vaults. I can see what was the 80 to 200 minutes. Yeah, as soon as it goes above 100 minutes, it becomes a problem for ETA. But for ETB, if those 2 vaults would be ETB, they would already carry a loss. So that's important to say here. And then we have last 2 slides. Keeper participation, especially important. So this is keeper participation only for kick events. So when they trigger an auction, pretty surprisingly, 18 keepers were kicking auctions, especially by knowing that retail, I think, didn't kick any auctions. I don't know of any UIs. It's also good to notice that these are not necessarily 18 different entities, right? They may have different wallets, many wallets. But then again, 18 different entities, wallets kicking, that's always good. This is also the amount they received as an incentive. So this is this chip variable parameter, which is the variable incentive, which is set at 0.1% of vault. So they get this amount back when they kick a vault. And as I said, this is the part where we need to reevaluate it, because some smaller vaults were not necessarily kicked immediately. and that's why we need to introduce this flat fee that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, otherwise there's mostly tree keepers that kicked most, I think, yeah, most of the auctions. And then we have takes. So these are the entities that actually purchase collateral. There's 21 of them. I guess retail is included here as well. And the amount is, again, it's great. Like compared to liquidations 1.2, when we had, 1 to 3 people bidding, this is, yeah, 10x, 20x better. So yeah, what should I say here? Looks good. Maybe there's, again, 3 entities which are performing, but that's probably bots related. So we want to see that as well. And I think that's it. The main conclusions are that we need to probably introduce this tip value, so the flat fee. The other one is mostly related, and I'm still thinking about it. Should we make an auction? There were some discussions. Should we make auction duration shorter? There are trade-offs of this. I've made a whole post on forum about it. Definitely for these 2 vaults looks as if duration should be shorter and everything should be fine. But it's really hard to say if this would be the case. Why is that? Because if you make auction duration shorter, it means the price is more aggressive, the auction price curve, right? It's more steep, it's steeper, which means that if you have some delays of even of bots, you could get in a pretty much similar scenario with 10 to 20% discount to OSM. And this is possible because if you make a shorter auction, delays are even more probable. You could have more congested network and so on. And yeah, you have these trade-offs basically. One other thing is that for ETB, maybe we should really make it more aggressive, because for ETB, it's really more risky, to lead to losses, because any discount 10-20% can lead to losses at Mkr really soon. And that's it, I think. If anybody has any questions.
Can you go back to that slide that lists all the unique keepers? Nice, thanks. And so your theory is that although there's 18 unique keepers, some of them might be like run by the same groups?
Yeah, it's very possible. Obviously, someone could make an on-chain analysis, maybe find, confirm this if it's possible, but hard to say.
Yeah, is it possible? Hold on, my connection's getting dropped. Is it possible that that these could be from the Web3 UIs as well?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. Could be.
Yeah, I can tell you that I don't know if anybody kicked through the UI, but I know of at least one person who bid through the UI. Said the experience was great and also profitable. So, we're still in a regime where it's not all bots winning these, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, as I said, I think I said once on chat, it's good to, not to rely on bots solely, because if it's 1 or 2 of them, and then you have this tragedy of the commons when retail thinks bots will take all the volume and then they stop bidding, but then one bot goes offline, then you have an issue. So it's good to see this kind of, bidding.
Cool. I guess, does anyone else have any comments or questions for Prash?
Yeah, hey Primoz, thanks for that presentation. What's your thinking behind raising the dust parameter? What are you thinking here? Or doubling, tripling?
Hard to say. I think Money Supply made a table when you actually input gas cost parameters, and you basically simulate how much it costs. He focused more on liquidations, but this was back on 1.2. Here we need to make a different simulation because it works differently now. I think it's less gas intensive, but this is only one part of the story. The other part is related to just user perspective. They want to unwind, but then if it costs $2,000 to unwind and his depth size is 5,000, he's not going to do it. So yeah, we need to make those calculations, and I can't really tell you a number right now.
Okay, appreciate that, man.
If I could be permitted just a second to get on a soapbox. So I think the liquidation system performed really well yesterday, in spite of what was really quite a bad market event. Like, this is worse than we've seen since Black Thursday by far. But I also want to not celebrate too much, because I think this is the warm up for whatever happens at the end of the current bull run. Today everything is green and going right back up. So there's going to be another one of these in the future, and probably worse. So I think this is like our dress rehearsal, and we really need to make sure we iron out any issues around profitability, dust levels, keeper incentivization, etc. So this was a great data point, but we shouldn't get complacent here, and we should take it forward and figure out how to really make this bulletproof.
Yeah, I'll second that. There was a moment when we were staring down the barrel of a $1 billion liquidation wave, and that made me feel a little bit of despair because I wasn't sure. I mean, obviously our overall box is set at 100 million right now, but I think we need to carefully think about, what can the system really push through it right now. Now, obviously the DAI supply dropped by half a billion-ish, right? Or 400 million or so. So that is in a way soft liquidations, but I don't know, just worth thinking, if this is a dress rehearsal for an even bigger event, what do we think we can actually do?
Yep. Yeah, I think those are great points. And yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure I'm speaking the truth, and I'm saying you guys and pretty much I guess they're going to continue to worry about it for the foreseeable future. So yeah, I'm sure. I guess when you guys are ready to present sort of proposals, I think everyone will be happy to see them. All right, so let's maybe we've got maybe 10 minutes left. We can maybe go sort of 5-10 minutes long. Let's maybe try and draw a line on that under that and sort of briefly cover PSMs, I guess, and discussion on those. I know that was something you guys wanted to cover, Chris and Co.
Yeah, let me move you guys around. Yeah, so we've got to figure out what we are going to do with stablecoins at some point, and so the mandated actors were starting to sort of discuss what we might want to do with stablecoins going forward, and it feels like most of the decisions, without getting, because we don't have a lot of time, into all of the details about what we might do with stablecoin or stablecoin vaults, and then possibly liquidations for those vaults. A lot of that sort of hinges on whether or not governance or the community sees the need for a PSM for various types of stablecoins, right? So, so there's one possibility for low liquidity, I guess that's probably the right way to say stablecoins, would be that we could basically put them in a PSM that has a 0 debt ceiling, so you can't add any more of those stablecoin types. you can provide DAI and get the stablecoin out. And so in theory, it's be like a one-way, you know, you throw it in and then on the other coin back out, but you can't sort of throw the stablecoin back in and then get DAI out of it. So, you know, maybe we do that with TrueUSD. Maybe we do that with PAX. I'm not sure. Maybe wanted to see what people were thinking, and maybe someone can start like I'm getting Starlinked. Hold on. Maybe someone can think of.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, you can? Okay. Maybe my audio is fine when it tells me that. Yeah. So just, you know, maybe to create like a signal thread or something about exactly what we want to, what governance wants to move into a PSM style format. And once we know that, then we can liquidate. We can set up like a sort of custom liquidator that would liquidate vaults that are under collateralized into that sort of PSM style setup. So which genuine like collateral types with stablecoins we have left, and we can think more critically about how we want to handle those and liquidations for those. So that's it. If anyone wants to discuss.
Yeah, it feels like the kind of crux of the issue is sort of figuring out which stablecoins we want PSMs for, I guess, if any others, right? Like
yeah, I think that's the first branching decision, I think, is going to be that. So that's kind of what I was hoping everybody would think about.
Yeah, so I may add here that there's basically six stablecoins. So USDC-A is going to PSM, liquidated to PSM, which exists for USDC-A, for USDC. We have USDC-B, which is totally unutilized. Debt ceiling is to 0. I think there's, I don't know, $600 of debt. So doing anything with it will cost on chain more than, you know, if you want to liquidate it or anything. I'm not sure, but the same goes with TUSD. The debt ceiling is set to 0. Again, $700 of debt. So kind of feels like with USDC-B and TUSD, not really reasonable to spend any time. And then we have PAX-USD, which is unwinding now because we introduced 1% stability fee. This token is pretty liquid lately. I think last time we checked, if you sell 5 million of it, it's already, I don't know, 20, 30% slippage on chain. So I'm not sure about PSM here, but the solution where you basically only allow, you know, certain amount of debt ceiling, the amount is liquidated, makes sense to me. So I would probably propose this. Similarly goes to TUSD. The on-chain liquidity is better, but there was this governance vote to limit debt ceiling to 0 because of that acquisition. So we can do the same with TUSD as with PAX-USD. So we can introduce these two PSMs limited, and then there's GUSD, which is the only one left, and probably one of the most prospective ones currently, at least looking from the on-chain activity and, you know, just DeFi farming type of activity. But it's not under collateralized, so we cannot put it into PSM. The question here is just, you know, either we introduce PSM for this one as well, and that's it. And then, of course, there are stable coins. There's Binance USD. There's, I don't know how many.
Yeah, but Binance USD, to my knowledge, is just a white labeled PAX USD.
Yep. It has better traction in DeFi yield farming, though, I think.
On BSC or on Ethereum?
I think, you know, on Ethereum. I might be wrong though.
I mean, I could be wrong as well, but I feel like I'm pretty active in the farming community, and I've barely seen BUSD used anywhere.
So it's on curve, and the slippage curves I checked are actually much better. Yeah, it's pretty big compared, at least compared to PEXG. Sorry, to PEX USD.
Can I just step back for a second to understand like the our overarching strategy and reasoning behind the PSM with other stable coins is to diversify away from how much we're using USDC? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think if we were going to have an active one, I think that would definitely be the case. Would be to limit collateral risk, but there is the sort of benefit, like this is a much cleaner type of liquidation. If we need to liquidate these, we basically don't take any like pricing risk or slippage risk. If we, you know, and we also have this like SYN queue problem. So if we were to try and, let's say, liquidate TUSD as vaults, like all of that would go out to liquidations 2.0, and then it would have some undefined price curve that hopefully would fetch a price, but would probably have some slippage, and we probably don't have enough liquidity in order to trade against it, and we'd probably take a loss, and it would go to MKR holders. So the alternative is you throw it into a PSM with a zero debt ceiling, and people can just come along and grab it whenever they need liquidity, and then eventually it trends to zero. So I think it's beyond just like diversifying collateral risk. It's like the PSM is in a way actually like a liquidation mechanism. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we're running a little low on time, but I was kind of interested to know if any of the community, I guess, have like strong opinions about any of the stablecoin options, right, beyond USDC. Like, is there anything like anybody thinks we should definitely have PSMs for, or anything that people think we definitely shouldn't have PSMs for, right? I think these are like the things we're trying to, I guess, figure out, because so we did previously have like a vote a good while ago about moving various stablecoins to PSMs, but that's a little old now, and the kind of environment has changed a little bit in a number of ways. So if anybody wants to sort of organize, you know, further signals, as Chris said, or just kind of wants to open the discussion, I think that would be helpful for, yeah, for the protocol engineering team and the rest of us as well.
I mean, it also offers, like, especially if we're allowing both ways on some of them, like income source that's not tied to the market market fluctuations. So I like that, and it also adds stability to the DeFi ecosystem. DAI is truly at $1 if you can redeem it for all these other dollar coins at any time. So just in general, I would think I would support as much as like Risk thinks we could take on. Would seem like a reasonable course of action from my perspective.
Yeah, so Aaron's saying would love for GUSD PSM. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think GUSD is maybe one of the contenders, right? Although pretty much you were saying GUSD has not great liquidity or something, right? I can't remember.
Well, it's not great compared to USDC, but it's better compared to PEX. But yeah, these are small. It's also questionable how much we can really diversify to other stablecoins, because you know all the arbitrage is still likely to happen with USDC. So I kind of feel we should force it, but then we need to limit PSM on USDC to attract others. I mean, to push others in. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, if we actually wanted to diversify, we kind of need some mechanism to like that sort of manages the debt ceilings of them better. So like you can't have one that takes up all of the room, right? Don't know how that would work. But...
Yeah, it's also risky because you still want to have high buffer available for USDC. Like if there's a worst case event, huge, you know, DAI shock.
But it's a DAI shock in the upward price direction. But if there, for whatever reason, happens to be a flood of DAI into the market that then subsequently pushes it below 1, all of the stable coins are going to go to 0. Well, all of our exposure will go to 0.
Well, that won't happen really soon. I made a post on forum. Like there needs to be 800 millions of DAI drained on Curve first, and then PSM starts draining. So there's like 1.5 billion, which is okay. Now the number is probably lower, but like I don't know, 1/3 or 20% of DAI supply. Yeah, I don't believe that can happen really soon.
Yeah, I think the comment that Nick made in the chat is really important, that we take on the failure of any of the stablecoins we decide to support with a PSM. And I think that unlike vaults that have, you know, a stability fee with a risk premium priced in, PSMs, they have the toll fee in and out, but I don't know if that is considered from a risk perspective. Like, since we're holding on to whatever, you know, 800, 900 million USDC, like, okay, that's USDC, it's relatively safe, but you know, I don't know, maybe we're okay with doing BUSD for 50 million or 25 million. If that goes, you know, what's is it really just the toll fees that are our kind of like buffer against that kind of risk? So I guess my question is, like, where's the risk hedging for taking on more PSMs and more stablecoins?
Yeah, just to expand on the context of that, right? Like putting something in a PSM is very different from just onboarding it as an asset. Because when you onboard a collateral type, right? Like let's say the KNC token, right? If the price of KNC drops, right, you know, we liquidate and that's how we kind of get our money back. With PSM, right, it's you know, we own those tokens and we're taking on that, you know, price that we just have complete exposure to those tokens. And the only way to really limit the additional exposure we take on, right, is for a debt ceiling for that PSM, right? But if the thing goes to 0, like we take that as a loss, right? And so if the thing fails, we should basically expect the entire debt ceiling that we allocate to this thing to just be filled up by people who are just, you know, trying, basically arbitraging, right? Just like, I'll give you this garbage maker and you give me $1, right? And so the risk of loss for any stablecoin failing is the debt ceiling that we set for the PSM. And the little in and out fees or whatever, like, aren't gonna matter shit for ensuring that loss.
I think one of the risks as well is the fact that currently our main competitor is USDC. And I'm quite sure they don't care about us because we are too small. But if they start to care about us and we have 1 million USDC in our vaults, they might start to lobby at Washington or somewhere else to try to blacklist this PSM. And that's the issue by having only one option. If we have many options, even if we don't use them, at least we have the option to quit the counterparty risk of USDC. I understand currently USDC is the best option, but having other options in the future, if there is a need, could be interesting.
Yeah, in general, like, given everything that everybody has said, me personally, speaking as an MKR voter, I would be in favor of like 2 or 3 PSMs for the most popular, least risky stablecoins, and then everything else is noise, you know?
The problem is nothing will see as much use as a USDC. So you can have 3 PSMs, but how much are you really diversifying when you have 1 billion USDC and like 25 million, you know, GUSD or something like that, right?
No, it will not, but
What
at least we have the facility and the ability to transfer the USDC to GUSD It will not be easy. I'm not saying that, but at least we are able to.
I'm almost wondering if there's some kind of like pre-configured way we can authorize to like liquidate the entire USDC PSM if we needed to do it like in a hurry, right? Like almost some way where you can have like a pre-signed transaction and then you just put it in a bot, which is checking the mempool, and you try to front run any blacklisting. And so obviously, right, whoever is running that bot, it's kind of dangerous because you could potentially just, you know, liquidate the PSM anyway, right? Even if there wasn't a blacklist transaction. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just thinking out loud here. I'm not sure if that's even viable, but just something to think about.
Yeah, like you'd see the transaction instantly flash mint, like the equivalent of DAI, create an LP token, and then just drop it in like an LP pool.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's no longer in the PSM. You didn't take any like market slippage. You probably are going to earn fees from the LP. Anyway, I'm thinking on the fly. I get myself in danger when I do that, but yeah.
I mean, even that, or just like trading it into DAI on something like Curve or Uniswap V3 or whatever, right? Where like you're going to take on some loss, but compared to the blacklisting risk, I mean, you've just completely just avoided ruin, right?
Cool.
Speaking of blacklisting, sorry, Long, I know you want to wrap up this call. Just one last comment. I am curious, like, hope maybe we could talk about it next week or on the forum or something. But yeah, I'm curious about the design decision from protocol engineering about potentially adding blacklists to like things like PSM preemptively, so that if there is like some ETH address that's like blacklisted by a government agency, then we could do the proactive thing and just kind of go along with that. But I know that that's kind of, there's a lot of ideological stuff, opinions that might shape people's views on this. So I'd be super curious to hear the conversation.
David, once you give yourself the ability to, all of a sudden you have the obligation to. So I'd be very, I'm not saying, first of all, I have no authority to say no, but I'm saying we should be very careful about implementing any kind of censorship on top of our permissionless platform, because we may find ourselves in a position where we are obligated to comply.
Yeah, that's really good insight.
All right. On that cheerful note, let's maybe consider wrapping up the call. We're a little over time now, so.
All right, cheers, everyone.
I appreciate everyone that stayed late. So yeah, thank you all for coming, and we'll speak again next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Dave.